Finally here at last, the last entry for this year's 31 for 31, and we're ending with yet another Akira Kurosawa. Actually a double pack this time, of Yojimbo and Sanjuro. Looking back, I think all the double features were Criterion releases, weirdly enough. Yojimbo and Sanjuro are both films I've wanted to see for a long time, this set being from one of the first Barnes & Noble Criterion sales I've ever been to, but for whatever reason I just never watched them. Yojimbo, being a film I've heard a lot about, is a story about a lone ronin coming into town when the innkeeper asks him for help since the town is divided by two ruthless gangs. The ronin strikes up a deal, then begins to pit the two gangs against themselves by offering his service to the highest bidder. That leads to a conflict that ends up falling apart when an inspector is coming by. After that, one of the gang leader's sons return with a revolver, and the war continues until the lone ronin's plan has been found out. From here he must try to defeat the gun-wielding madman and set the town free. The lone ronin Sanjuro being played by Toshiro Mifune. Mifune and Kurosawa has collaborated a ton throughout each other's careers, in kind of a similar fashion as to like Martin Scorsese and Robert De Niro, where you know if these two are doing something together, you're probably getting into something great, and that's exactly what happens here. Yojimbo is a ton of fun with some amazing filmmaking. The story is fun and fits the Western storytelling vibe with common motifs, but instead of being a Western with cowboys, it's samurais, which is arguably cooler. There's a lot of twists and turns from the double agent plan of Sanjuro, which can lead to some really fun and funny moments. I was honestly surprised by how humorous this film was, while also being able to contrast that well with a dark and gritty backbone. The film looks beautiful as to expect with Kurosawa. The film uses some pretty contrasting black and white that makes for some really striking moments. The fight choreography is fun and fast, the costumes look amazing, and the score is great as well. There's very little to complain about overall. Really though, this isn't a very action-packed film, but the dialogue and the conniving nature of most of the characters just set up for some really enthralling pieces. Considering how fleshed out the characters are as well, it's easy to get wrapped up into the film's world. Mifune as Sanjuro is great as he nails the character perfectly. Mifune's demeanor just fits that wandering but cunning samurai who's a real threat both physically and mentally. The structures of the gangs are set up nicely so you understand how they work and their motives. It's a film so expertly crafted and paced that the next thing you know, boom, the credits are rolling. It's easy to understand after finally watching the film just how many films have been inspired by Yojimbo. However, I don't think any's done it really as well as Yojimbo. This is probably the easiest film to recommend to people who are wanting to get into the samurai genre, classic Japanese cinema, or Akira Kurosawa, as it's both expertly crafted and wickedly entertaining. It's one of those films that could easily become a 10 out of 10 in the future with another watch or two, but currently I'm thinking about like a 9.5 out of 10. The other film in the set is Sanjuro, a somewhat sequel to Yojimbo, released in 1962, also directed by Kurosawa and also starring and reprising Toshiro Mifune as Sanjuro. This time around, Sanjuro wanders himself right into the middle of a political tiff when Masuda the Chamberlain is kidnapped. The one clan superintendent tries to get Masuda to write a confession that he's corrupt so the superintendent can take control of his clan. Sanjuro decides to help the rebels and try to free the Chamberlain and his family by devising a plot to outthink the superintendent and his clan. Honestly, this is just basically Yojimbo again, following the same plot beats and barely changing the story enough not to be completely recycled. Maybe it's because I watched these films back to back, but I just found myself rather disappointed and somewhat bored with Sanjuro since the film wasn't really doing anything new here. Sure, there's a lot to love for sure. The cinematography is beautiful, the score is great, the costumes look stunning, the fight choreography is solid, the performances are good. Mifune is the perfect choice for this role again. There's also a standout scene at the end of the film where Sanjuro has a duel with one of the henchmen of the superintendents. That will probably always stick with me. But this is just basically the same thing as Yojimbo, minus a lot of the fun characters and a better setup. Sanjuro is a Mad Max-esque type of character, a lone ronin who wanders from town to town and helping people along the way. It sets up for you to do pretty much anything with him, so for the film to feel like a recycled version of Yojimbo left a lot to be desired. Somehow this film is about 20 minutes shorter than Yojimbo, but it feels about 30 minutes longer because of this. The film never towed the lines of comedy and drama, but feels a bit more flat in its tonal complexion to be a more forward action thriller. The bumbling idiots that Sanjuro is trying to help always gets in the way, which felt like it somewhat tried to be played up for laughs, but just didn't succeed. Some of the characters are annoyingly stupid as well, especially when they rescue the Chamberlain's wife, whose naivety gets frustrating at some points. There is some nice inner conflicts with Sanjuro, who at this point is just tired of the bloodshed. He doesn't want to kill anybody, but he's constantly forced to, which does make that ending scene much more impactful. There is a lot of cool things like that presented here. I liked the idea of the political conflict and the struggle of power. I love how Sanjuro plays these mind games, but again, when the film feels like it just hits every plot beat the same way as Yojimbo did, and I watched these back to back, I just wanted something more. Maybe after a while I'll come back to Sanjuro on its own and it'll strike a better chord with me. I feel like I've been kind of hard on this film, but by no means is this a bad film either. On the contrary, it's actually a pretty great film. It has a lot of Kurosawa's trappings that make him one of the best in my opinion, and one of my personal favorites. My rating could definitely go up on a second viewing, but for now I'm going to give this one a 7 out of 10. But we did it. We finished 31 for 31. All 31 movies, 31 days. This was an arduous task, but I think we covered a lot of really cool movies that I'm actually really happy to finally have scratched off my watch list. Much like last year, I'm going to do my top 5 favorite movies that I covered this year. So let's prepare for my top 5. Number 5, Ode to Nothing. Number 4, Police Story 1 and 2. I know I'm cheating a little bit there, but Police Story 1 and 2. Number 3, Leviathan from 2014. Number 2, one of the biggest surprises, Lost in Translation. I just had a lot of fun with that one. But our number 1 is a complete cop-out. It's a complete cheat. But the films of Akira Kurosawa, Ikiru, Ron, and Yojimbo. We covered 4 Akira Kurosawa films this year. The RNG Gods really shined heavily on Kurosawa, which I'm actually really happy with. He's one of my favorite directors, and I'm glad to just cross off more of his films off my watch list. But there's no denying that Yojimbo is probably my favorite of the 4 we watched of his. Sorry, Sanjuro, maybe some other time you'll get on my top 5. As much as I love Yojimbo, there's no denying that Ikiru and Ron aren't awesome films as well, but I just didn't want my entire top 5 to be nothing but Akira Kurosawa, pretty much. But that is 31 for 31 of 2022. I hope you enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun making this series. This is one of my favorite series that I do every year. I'm going to try to make it a yearly staple. It's just a lot of fun, but I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you next time. Take it easy. Peace.